In July 1969, and at the banks of the River Niger at Ndone, Biafra, I was conscripted at gunpoint and conscripted as a 14-year-old soldier into a war that was on par with the American Civil War or the Spanish Civil War. Without any formal training as a soldier, I was marched at gunpoint to the Biafran side of the Oguta war front.
Before the world recognized him as genius, before Time magazine called him the unsung hero behind the internet, before CNN called him a father of the internet, before President Bill Clinton stood in front of the world and called him one of the great minds of the information age, he was a 14-year-old boy. He had no uniform that fit him. He had no training. He had a rifle pushed into his arms at gunpoint. Today, we are not just reacting to a lecture. We are reacting to the story of a boy who was marched to a war front to replace a soldier or soldiers who had died before him. One of 500 men had lost. He was meant to replace one of the 500 men lost trying to recapture a single town, and who somehow survived to become one of the greatest scientific minds Africa has ever produced. This is the story Philip Emeagwali doesn't often get asked to tell. Not a story of supercomputers, not equations. This time, he talks about Biafra, 1969, and a war that would come to be spoken of in the same breath as the American Civil War and the Spanish Civil War. Stay with me, because by the end of this, the word genius is going to mean something different to you.
In July 1969, and at the banks of the River Niger at Ndone, Biafra, I was conscripted at gunpoint and conscripted as a 14-year-old soldier into a war that was on par with the American Civil War or the Spanish Civil War. Without any formal training as a soldier, I was marched at gunpoint to the Biafran side of the Oguta war front. At Oguta war front, Biafran soldiers were living on less than one cigarette-sized cup of gari a day. Gari is pulverized fried cassava root. Biafran soldiers added palm kernel nuts and water from the Oguta lake to their gari. When I arrived at Oguta war front, some Biafran soldiers had gone for days without food, and they were threatening to leave their holes. After 48 hours without food, I became woozy with hunger. Because there was nothing to eat at Oguta war front, I was immediately reassigned to the officers' mess or kitchen of the Biafran army at Ndone. 2 months before my arrival at the Oguta war front, Biafra, and in May 1969, Murtala Mohammed, who would later become the president of Nigeria, and Mohammed Shua were given command of the Nigerian army at Oguta war front. In late May 1969, and 2 months before I arrived at Oguta war front, Mohammed Shua had defeated the Biafran army and captured downtown Oguta. A few weeks later, downtown Oguta was recaptured by the Biafran army, but recaptured after a loss of 500 soldiers. I was conscripted into the army and conscripted at the market at Ndoni, Biafra. I was conscripted to replace one of the 500 Biafran soldiers that died in the battle to recapture downtown Oguta, Biafra. The Battle of Oguta War Front was personally commanded by Odumegwu Ojukwu, the leader of Biafran nation. When I arrived at Oguta War Front, Joseph Hannibal Achuze, nicknamed Air Raid, was commanding the Biafran soldiers. I learned that Olusegun Obasanjo, who would later become the 3-time president of Nigeria, was commanding the opposing Nigerian army at the Oguta War Front. Olusegun Obasanjo arrived in Oguta War Front in July 1969 and arrived at the same time that I arrived in Oguta War Front. In July 1969, I arrived at Oguta War Front and arrived as an untrained soldier and arrived at about the time Colonel Olusegun Obasanjo arrived with 10,000 trained soldiers. Those Nigerian soldiers killed or wounded 2,200 Igbo civilians. In July 1969, Biafran soldiers were trained at the war front. Biafran soldiers were only trained to aim and shoot to kill. 3 months after I arrived at Oguta War Front, Colonel Olusegun Obasanjo recaptured the city of Oguta and did so on October 9, 1969. I was a Biafran child soldier that was transferred from the Oguta War Front to serve as a cook in the officers' headquarters at the bank of the River Niger at Ndoni, Biafra. I served in the Biafran army for the 6 months that preceded the end of the Nigerian Civil War that ended on the 15th of January of 1970.
The ones who never got the chance to become anything are in their millions. Who knows what they would have become? Let's just sit a little with the timeline for a second, because it's very easy to allow numbers slide past us. May 1969, Nigerian military forces under the command of Muritala Mohammed and Muhammadu Shua captures Oguta. Weeks later, Biafran forces, personally commanded by General Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu himself, recaptures the same Oguta. At what cost did he recapture Oguta? 500 soldiers, not 500 casualties over a campaign. 500 soldiers, 500 lives for one town in a matter of weeks. By July 1969, according to what you heard from Philip Emeagwali, a 14-year-old boy is pulled out of the market and handed a gun to go and replace one of those 500 men. That sentence should mean something to you. That sentence should stop you from scrolling as an Igbo person. Imagine this is the time and your son is handed a gun to go and defend his homeland because his father has been killed. A child, a teenage boy, conscripted to fill a space where a grown man had just died. That is what war demanded of the entire generation of young Igbo men, women, and children. Not courage as ideal, but courage as a substitute for a body count. It's either you fight or you die. And it wasn't just about the front line. Think about the conditions he describes. Soldiers surviving on less than 1 cigarette tin size of gari per day. We call it mposega. 1 mposega of gari per day was what the soldiers survived on. Palm kernels were used as snack, and lake water was what they drank and used to make their stew. Men so hungry after 48 hours without food that they were ready to abandon their posts. Not because of cowardice, but because the human body simply cannot sustain a war on that little. And on the other side of the same front, 10,000 trained soldiers arrived, trained, and as he says, to aim and shoot to kill. Who are they killing? Civilians. Whether you are in the army or not, as long as you are a grown-up boy. And in that same month, over 2,200 Biafran civilians were killed or wounded at best. That is the imbalance an entire generation of young Igbo children stood inside of. Untrained boys with rifles against trained soldiers with orders to shoot to kill. Starving men in front lines against a blockade. That is what the generation before you faced. And still, they held Oguta long enough, fought hard enough, and history remembers it as a real battle, not just a massacre. It was a battle. Mbekwasi, n'ọbụlụ gadali na we bule, mana ogwe pusha, awa hube ya no yo no nega. What gets me the most is what happened to Philip Emeagwali specifically. He didn't get to leave the war. He got reassigned from starving on the front line to cooking in officers' mess. So he changed position. He didn't get the chance to leave. That is not even an escape. That is just a different assignment, a quieter way. A child survives a war. His country decided he had to fight. They had to fight to survive. 6 months later, the war ends on January 15, 1970. And somewhere inside that surviving 14-year-old is the mind that will one day help to redefine how the entire world computes. Think about that. How many of his kind were eliminated? How many geniuses were lost? But here is a part of this story we cannot skip past for the sake of a tidy ending. Most of the young men standing next to him didn't get that second chance. They didn't get the second half of the story. They didn't get to talk about what happened because they were gone. Aso no Isioma, ya Jesenwa. So Philip Emeagwali can be best classified as one of the Isioma Jesenwa. Isioma Jesenwa, most of his peers didn't get the chance to talk about this. Many of the people I have profiled on this platform were either survivors or their lost siblings. People like Christopher Okibo was lost. Imagine such a genius dying in his 30s. So many people were lost. When I profiled Professor Bennett Ifakando, who redefined the American Football League, he talked about the same thing. He was just a 3-year-old boy who later in life started struggling with diseases associated with malnutrition from his early childhood days. So people who did not get the chance to talk about what happened, people whose potentials were buried, were many, not just Philip Emeagwali. Philip Emeagwali is just a lucky one, and he's just among the lucky few who survived. A generation of geniuses were erased, and specifically, people who could have changed Igbo land. Most of the young men standing next to him didn't get that second chance to tell their own story. For every Philip Emeagwali who survived to change the world, there were thousands of him, thousands of Igbo children, boys and girls, student age, market age, child age, who became casualty numbers instead of case studies. 500 at Oguta alone in just a matter of few weeks. 2,200 civilians in a single month. Multiply that figure across the length and breadth of the war, and you will start to understand the sacrifice it actually cost the Igbo of that region. Not just that region, everywhere that was considered Igbo, because these things went on in Ogwashuku, Asaba, Ishagu, and so many other regions, so many other communities considered Igbo because they were Igbo. It wasn't just about the eastern region, that is the old eastern region. It was about communities that were considered Igbo. So the annihilation went on from community to community. The massacre and pogroms are underreported in these communities, but they happened. The actual cost of the war was not just life, but futures. The future of the region, the doctors, the engineers, the teachers, and yes, maybe other fathers of other inventions who never got the chance at all to grow into adulthood and manifest their God-given potentials. As we know, Oba, but in this case, the Oje died. That is why this story that I am sharing with you today matters, to remind you of what was lost. That is why also this story matters beyond the man's genius. It is a reminder that greatness like Emeagwali's didn't emerge in spite of sacrifices around him. His greatness emerged from inside of it, carried on the backs of a generation that mostly doesn't get remembered by name. Whenever we celebrate Philip Emeagwali, we owe it to those who perished to say their sacrifices out loud and to also remember them. Because it is not about those who survived. What about those who were sacrificed? So we remember their own sacrifices. So, when someone asks you what Philip Emeagwali invented, before you talk about parallel processing or supercomputers, maybe you can start here. Start with the 14-year-old boy, because you can't understand the mind that builds the future without understanding the war he survived or the war that shaped him. Thanks for watching this beautiful documentary and supporting Enuani Cultural Forum. Please look through our channel. You'll find so many other interesting videos you can binge on. Leave a comment for us in the comment section. Let us know what you think about this story, about this lecture by Philip Emeagwali. Thanks for watching. My name once again is Prince Onwadenem Ngozi Chukwuka Fortune, and I will see you in my subsequent videos. Bye.